The blue-white marble of Earth hung peacefully in space, unaware that today would change humanity's destiny forever. In the year 2157, humans had colonized Mars and established bases on the Moon. They were eager to reach farther into the stars. Alan Carter stood nervously in the United Nations Grand Hall in New York. As Earth's lead diplomat, he straightened his tie and watched the large view screen. The alien ship had appeared 3 days ago, positioning itself in orbit between Earth and the Moon. "They're hailing us again," said Diane Powell, the admiral of Earth's small defense fleet. Her uniform was crisp, her expression guarded. The view screen flickered to life. The alien that appeared had blue-gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. It called itself High Chancellor Zorix of the Galactic Consortium. "People of Earth," Zorix spoke in perfect English, "we have observed your civilization for decades. You have achieved much, but we have concerns." Alan stepped forward. "Chancellor Zorix, we welcome peaceful contact with your consortium. What concerns you about humanity?" The alien's upper eyes blinked slowly. "Your species is unpredictable, violent. You fight wars among yourselves. Your history shows an alarming pattern of destruction." "We've made mistakes," Alan admitted, "but we've grown. We've learned." "Perhaps," Zorix replied. "But the 7 species of the consortium have agreed. Humanity must be contained until you prove yourselves worthy. You will remain in your solar system. Attempt to leave, and there will be consequences." Gasps echoed through the hall. Alan's hands trembled. "You can't just confine an entire species." "We can, and we will," Zorix stated flatly. "It is for the safety of galactic civilization." World leaders argued for hours after the transmission ended. Some wanted to fight. Others counseled caution. The debate ended the next day when Zorix demonstrated the consortium's power. Every major city on Earth lost power for 24 hours. No technology worked. It was a clear message. Resistance would be futile. 1 week later, at a hastily built facility on the Moon, Alan Carter and the world's leaders signed the Treaty of Luna. Earth accepted exile within the boundaries of the solar system. "This is a temporary measure," Zorix assured them. "In a century or 2, the consortium may reconsider." After the aliens left, Alan found Admiral Powell staring out a window at the Earth rising over the lunar horizon. "We just surrendered our future," Alan said, his voice hollow. Powell's gaze remained fixed on the blue planet. "No, we just bought time." Back on Earth, riots broke out in several cities. People were angry and afraid. The idea of being caged in their own solar system went against humanity's exploring nature. 6 months later, Admiral Powell called a secret meeting in an underground facility in Colorado. Military leaders and top scientists gathered around a table. "The consortium has placed monitoring stations at the edge of our system," Powell explained, pointing to a holographic map. "They can detect our conventional ships and transmissions." "So we're truly trapped," said Dr. Frank Winters, a physicist with tired eyes. "Only if we play by their rules," Powell replied. "I've received approval for Project Defiance. We're going to find a way past the blockade." Dr. Olivia Martinez raised her hand. "I may have a starting point. My team has been theorizing about manipulating space-time to move without conventional propulsion. No energy signature the aliens could detect." Powell nodded with approval. "How long?" "Years," Martinez admitted. "Maybe a decade, but it's possible." Powell looked around the room at humanity's best and brightest. "Then we start today. They think they've caged us, but they've only delayed the inevitable." Humanity was born to explore the stars. As the meeting continued deep into the night, a plan formed. The aliens had judged humanity too harshly. They saw only the violence, not the creativity, not the determination, not the resilience. The consortium had made a serious mistake. They hadn't contained a threat. They had challenged humanity to prove itself. And humans never back down from a challenge. 10 years passed under the watchful eyes of the consortium. Their monitoring stations loomed at the edge of the solar system like silent sentinels. On Earth and Mars, life continued. Cities grew. Children were born. But humanity never forgot they were prisoners in their own home. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility known only as the bunker, Dr. Frank Winters rubbed his tired eyes. Gray had replaced the brown in his hair since Project Defiance began. Screens surrounded him, showing complex equations and simulation results. "Another failure?" asked Dr. Olivia Martinez as she entered the lab. Her once dark hair now had streaks of silver, but her eyes still burned with determination. Frank shook his head. "Not a failure. A lesson. The drive works in simulation, but the energy signature is still detectable." "We're close," Olivia said, studying the screens. "What if we modify the field geometry? Make it less stable but more subtle?" They worked through the night, as they had for years. Above them, the world believed they were developing better solar harvesters. Only a select few knew the truth. 3 months later, Admiral Powell visited the bunker. Now in her 60s, she walked with a slight limp from an old injury, but her presence still commanded respect. "Show me," she ordered without preamble. Frank led her to a sealed chamber. Inside floated a small craft, no larger than a shuttle. It looked ordinary except for the strange distortion around its hull, like heat waves on a summer road. "We call it the Phantom Drive," Frank explained. "It doesn't move the ship through space in the conventional sense. It shifts the ship partially outside normal spacetime. The energy signature is minimal, almost indistinguishable from background radiation." "Will it get past the monitors?" Powell asked. Olivia nodded. "In theory. We've tested it against replicas of consortium sensors. They don't detect anything." "Good," Powell said, "because we're ready to build the real thing." 6 months later, in a hidden shipyard inside the asteroid belt, the first human stealth ship was complete. They named it Defiance. It was small, designed for speed and stealth rather than comfort or firepower. Captain Samantha Riley walked the length of her new command. At 35, she was the youngest captain in Earth's small fleet, chosen for her exceptional piloting skills and unwavering nerve. "She's beautiful," Sam said, running her hand along the ship's smooth interior. "She's our future," Admiral Powell replied. "The mission is simple but critical. Get past the blockade, reach Alpha Centauri, and return undetected. Prove the concept works." Sam nodded. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow. The consortium monitoring pattern gives us a 5-hour window where their attention will be focused on the Jupiter sector." The next day, Defiance powered up in silence. Its crew of 6 felt the weight of history on their shoulders. Sam sat in the captain's chair, her fingers tapping nervously on the armrest. "Phantom Drive online," reported her pilot, John Weber. "Ready when you are, Captain." Sam took a deep breath. Engage. The sensation was strange, like falling in all directions at once. Through the view screen, space looked different. The stars smeared slightly like watercolors left in rain. For 3 tense hours, they approached the boundary where consortium monitors patrolled. Everyone held their breath as they crossed the invisible line that had caged humanity for a decade. Nothing happened. No alarms. No pursuit. The monitors continued their programmed patrol, blind to the ship slipping past them. "We're through," John whispered, as if afraid the aliens might hear. The journey to Alpha Centauri took 2 days. When they arrived, Sam ordered the ship to emerge from phantom space near the system's largest planet. The view was breathtaking. A new sun, new worlds. No human had ever seen this view with their own eyes. Sam opened a secure channel to Earth, using the quantum communication system that left no trace. "The cage door is open," she transmitted, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. On Earth, in the bunker, Admiral Powell received the message. She smiled for the first time in years. "Now," she said quietly, "the real work begins." 15 years after the successful flight of the Defiance, Humanity had established a secret colony on a rocky planet orbiting Proxima Centauri. They named it New Haven. The colony existed entirely underground, safe from prying eyes and consortium patrols. William Garcia walked through the main tunnel of New Haven, nodding to colonists as he passed. As colony director, he carried the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. At 53, his face showed the stress of leading the first human settlement beyond the solar system. The tunnel opened into a large cavern that served as the colony shipyard. 5 vessels were under construction, each equipped with the improved Phantom drive. Engineers swarmed over the hulls like ants, working day and night. Director Garcia called Kelly Johnson, waving from a nearby workstation. Her dark skin contrasted with her white lab coat as she beckoned him over. Kelly was New Haven's chief scientist, a brilliant physicist who had expanded on the original Phantom drive design. She had also developed a revolutionary communication system using quantum entanglement. "I've got it working," she said, pointing to a small device on her desk. Instant communication across any distance with no detectable signal. William smiled. "The quantum comm is ready. Tested between here and the outer moon. Works perfectly. We can now coordinate with Earth and our scout ships without the consortium knowing." This was a major breakthrough. Until now, ships had to return to New Haven to report their findings, slowing expansion efforts. William placed a hand on Kelly's shoulder. "This changes everything. We can safely extend our reach deeper into the galaxy." Alarms suddenly blared throughout the cavern. Red lights flashed, and colonists moved quickly to predetermined positions. "What's happening?" Kelly asked, grabbing her tablet. Nathan Brooks, New Haven's defense chief, rushed toward them. His normally calm demeanor was tense. "Consortium patrol ship entered the system. It's conducting a standard sweep, but it's coming unusually close to our position." William's heart raced. Discovery would mean disaster not just for New Haven, but for Earth as well. The consortium would realize humanity had broken their treaty and might retaliate against their homeworld. "Evacuation plan?" William asked. "Not enough time," Nathan replied. "But I have another option. The new camouflage technology we've been developing. We can deploy it now." "It hasn't been tested," Kelly warned. "No choice," Nathan said grimly. William nodded. "Do it." Nathan ran to a control panel and entered a series of commands. Outside, on the planet's surface, hundreds of small devices activated. They began generating a complex energy field designed to bend light and other scanning methods around the colony. In the command center, they watched on screens as the consortium ship moved into orbit. Its scanning beams swept the surface. Minutes stretched like hours as the alien ship continued its survey. William held his breath. Beside him, Kelly gripped the edge of the console so hard her knuckles turned white. Finally, the ship changed course, moving away from the planet. It jumped to faster than light speed, disappearing from their sensors. The entire colony exhaled in relief. "That was too close," William said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We need to accelerate our plans." Later that day, William called a meeting with the colony leadership. Nathan Brooks, Kelly Johnson, and the other department heads gathered around the table in the conference room. "Today proved we're vulnerable," William began. "The consortium is expanding its patrol routes. It's only a matter of time before they discover us unless we take bold action." "What do you propose?" asked Susan Lee, the agricultural director. William activated a holographic display showing a map of nearby star systems. "We need to push further out, establish more colonies, spread humanity across multiple worlds so we can't be stamped out in one strike." "The Shadow Fleet isn't ready," Nathan cautioned. "We'll make it ready," William replied firmly. "And with Kelly's quantum comm system, we can coordinate our efforts across vast distances." He looked at each person around the table. 15 years ago, Captain Riley opened the cage door. Now it's time for humanity to truly step outside. The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Then Kelly spoke up. If we're going to do this, I have some ideas for improving the Shadow Fleet's stealth capabilities. One by one, the others began to offer their expertise. The meeting stretched late into the night as they planned humanity's next bold move. When William finally returned to his quarters, he looked at an old photo of Earth on his wall. "We're coming back," he promised quietly. "But first, we're going to change the galaxy." The scout ship Pathfinder drifted silently in the shadow of a large moon. Commander Eric Diaz stood on the bridge, watching the planet below through the viewscreen. It was a beautiful world, with vast blue oceans and green continents. But what had caught his attention was not the planet's natural beauty, but the structures visible on its surface. "Magnify Sector 4, Eric ordered. The screen zoomed in to show what was clearly an alien settlement, but more disturbing were the large industrial facilities surrounding it. Massive machines dug into the Earth, extracting resources. Around these facilities, beings moved in patterns that suggested forced labor. "Consortium mining operation," said Linda Hayes, his second in command. "But those workers don't look like consortium species." Eric nodded grimly. "They're natives. The consortium is using them as labor." This was the fifth system the Pathfinder had explored since leaving New Haven 3 months ago. Their mission was to map potential locations for future human colonies. Finding an inhabited world wasn't in the plan, let alone discovering what appeared to be consortium exploitation. "We should leave," Linda suggested. "Our orders are to avoid contact." Eric hesitated. Something about the scene below troubled him deeply. "Scan the settlement. I want to know more about those people." The scan revealed a primitive civilization, roughly equivalent to Earth's early industrial age. They called themselves the Terraki. The consortium had established mining operations on their world 20 years ago and now controlled most of their resources. "They're being worked to death," Eric said, reviewing the data. "This goes against everything we understood about the consortium. They presented themselves as benevolent guardians, protecting the galaxy from dangerous species like us." "What do you want to do?" Linda asked. "We can't interfere without revealing ourselves." Before Eric could answer, the sensors beeped urgently. "Small craft approaching from the surface," reported Ben Miller at the sensor station. "It's not consortium design. Looks like a local vessel. They can't detect us through the phantom field," Eric said, puzzled. "They're following a specific course," Ben explained. "I think they spotted our shadow when we passed their moon." Eric made a quick decision. Maintain position. Let them approach. The small craft drew near, clearly searching. It was a crude vessel, built with salvaged materials. "They're hailing on simple radio frequencies," Ben reported. "Let's hear it," Eric ordered. A voice filled the bridge, speaking in an alien language. The Pathfinder's computer worked to translate. "No, you are there. Please respond. We need help. We have seen how you hide from the Sky Lords. Please." Eric exchanged glances with Linda. "They're desperate enough to reach out to an unknown ship. That says something." Against regulations, Eric made a choice that would change the course of human history. Open a channel. Hours later, the leader of the Terraki resistance, Kalem, stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder. He was humanoid, but with copper-colored skin and 4 arms. His large eyes widened as Eric explained humanity's situation. "Your people were caged by the consortium, just as mine are enslaved," Kalem said when Eric finished. "They fear you because you have what my people lack, the technology, and will to resist them. We've managed to escape our cage," Eric admitted, "but we're still hiding. We're not strong enough to challenge the consortium openly." Kalem moved to the view screen, looking down at his world. "My people die in those mines every day. We fight with primitive weapons against their advanced technology. Alone, we will eventually be exterminated. But together." Eric knew he was crossing a line, but something felt right about this moment. "I need to take you to meet our colony leaders." When they returned to New Haven with Kalem, the colony council was divided. Some argued that contact with the Terraki endangered everything humanity had built. Others saw an opportunity for an alliance. The debate ended when Security Chief Lisa Montgomery stood up. She was normally quiet during council meetings, but now her voice rang with conviction. We didn't come this far just to become like our jailers. If we turn our backs on these people, we're no better than the consortium. William Garcia, now in his 50s, nodded slowly. Lisa's right. We broke free to find our own path, not to hide forever. He turned to Colin. Tell us more about these mining operations. How vulnerable are they? As the meeting continued, a plan began to form. A plan that would transform humanity's secret escape into something much larger. A rebellion was about to begin. Dawn broke over the mining complex on Toronto. Consortium overseers prepared for another day of extracting valuable minerals using Terraki labor. None of them noticed the slight shimmer in the air as 3 human ships descended through the atmosphere, hidden by their phantom drives. On the lead ship, Commander Eric Diaz and Caldum made final preparations. 20 human soldiers checked their weapons while 30 Terraki resistance fighters gripped unfamiliar human guns with their 4 hands. Remember, Eric told the combined force, this is a liberation, not a massacre. We disable the consortium guards and free the workers. Caldum nodded. My people have waited generations for this day. The attack began with precision. Human ships appeared suddenly above the 3 main guard towers, deploying soldiers using fast drop lines. The guards barely had time to register surprise before being stunned by non-lethal weapons. Meanwhile, Caldum led the ground assault on the worker barracks, freeing hundreds of shocked Terraki. Within 40 minutes, the entire complex was under their control. Not a single life was lost on either side. The consortium overseers were bound and placed in a secure building. Eric watched as freed Terraki embraced their rescuers, many weeping with joy. He opened a channel to the human fleet waiting in orbit. Phase 1 complete, he reported. Beginning Phase 2. The Terraki were given a choice. Leave with the humans to safety on another world, or stay and join the growing resistance. Most chose to stay and fight for their planet. As the human ships prepared to leave, sensors detected consortium vessels approaching from the edge of the system. They're responding faster than we expected, Linda warned. We need to go now. The human fleet engaged their phantom drives, disappearing from normal space moments before the consortium ships arrived. They left behind no evidence of their involvement, only stories told by the freed Terraki about mysterious rescuers who could vanish into thin air. Back on New Haven, the Council received Eric's report with mixed reactions. They had committed to helping the Terraki, but directly opposing the consortium was a dangerous escalation. They'll intensify their patrols, Nathan Brooks warned. They may even send investigators to Earth. William Garcia nodded. We knew this was a risk. But we've started something important here. He turned to Peter Collins, New Haven's chief diplomat. How goes your work with the other resistance groups? Peter, a tall man with kind eyes, activated a holographic display showing a dozen star systems. News of the Toronto liberation is spreading fast. I've made contact with resistance movements on these worlds. All suffer under consortium control in various ways. All want our help. We can't fight the entire consortium, Kelly Johnson pointed out. No, William agreed. But we can create a network, share technology, coordinate actions, build alliances. Peter nodded. I've already begun establishing what I call the Liberty Network. Secure communications using Kelly's quantum tech. Training, supplies, intelligence sharing. It's working, Eric added. 3 more worlds have reached out since Toronto. The consortium has made more enemies than they realize. The meeting was interrupted when an urgent message arrived from Earth. The consortium had dispatched a punitive fleet to the Sol system, demanding the surrender of the rogue human elements responsible for the Toronto incident. William's face paled. They're threatening Earth. Earth doesn't even know what we're doing, Lisa Montgomery said. The message continued. Earth's leaders had responded with complete denial and provided evidence of their compliance with the Treaty of Luna. The consortium ships remained in orbit, but had taken no action yet. Admiral Diane Powell, now in her 70s and the head of Earth's Defense Forces, had added a personal note. Whatever you're doing out there, keep going. They're scared. The game has only just begun. William looked around the room at the leadership of humanity's secret expansion. Admiral Powell is right. The consortium is reacting out of fear. For the first time, they're facing something they didn't expect. Resistance. So what's our next move? Asked Eric. William's expression hardened with determination. We escalate. The Liberty Network becomes our priority. Every successful operation will bring more allies, more resources, and more consortium attention, Nathan cautioned. William nodded. Yes, but divided attention. They can't watch everywhere at once. As the meeting continued, a new strategy took shape. Humanity would not confront the consortium directly. Instead, they would build a shadow alliance that would grow stronger with each passing day, until the balance of power shifted forever. 6 months after the Toronto liberation, humanity's shadow war against the consortium spread across a dozen star systems. The human fleet, now grown to 30 ships, operated from hidden bases scattered throughout the outer regions of unexplored space. Major Catherine Wells stood before a tactical display in the command center of New Haven. At 35, she had quickly risen through the ranks due to her brilliant strategic mind. William Garcia had put her in charge of all liberation operations. The consortium is struggling to respond, Catherine explained to the assembled leadership. Every time they strengthen defenses in one sector, we strike in another. On the display, red dots showed consortium facilities and blue dots marked successful liberation missions. The pattern was clear. The consortium forces were being stretched thin. I call it the Hydra Protocol, Catherine continued. For every counterattack they launch, we initiate 2 new rebellions elsewhere. William nodded approvingly. How are our allies holding up? The Liberty Network now includes 14 species, Peter Collins reported. The Terraki have completely liberated their homeworld. The Valna and Scythians are making steady progress. On New Haven, the pace of research had accelerated dramatically. Dr. Juan Rodriguez, a brilliant computer scientist who had joined the colony 5 years ago, had made a revolutionary breakthrough. I'd like to introduce you to Aurore, Juan said, activating a holographic interface. A shimmering blue light formed into the shape of a galaxy. Hello, said a calm, clear voice. I am Aurore, Advanced Universal Reconnaissance and Operational Response Algorithm. The leaders watched in amazement as the AI system demonstrated its capabilities. Using data gathered from across the Liberty Network, Aurore could predict consortium fleet movements with stunning accuracy. She analyzes patrol patterns, response times, communication protocols, everything, Juan explained proudly. She can tell us where consortium ships will be before their own commanders know. This changes everything, William said. With Aurore's help, we can avoid detection completely and strike with perfect timing. Lisa Montgomery, who had become William's most trusted advisor, looked troubled. We're winning the shadow war, but the consortium still has technological advantages. We need better ships, better weapons. Actually, said Kelly Johnson, I've been working with Colum and scientists from other allied species. By combining our knowledge, we've made significant advances, but we need manufacturing facilities larger than what we have here. Catherine pointed to a location on the tactical display. Helios Prime. It's a major consortium shipyard in this sector, lightly defended because it's so deep in their territory they believe it's safe. William studied the location. If we could capture it intact. Exactly, Catherine said. Not just destroy. Capture. With those facilities, we could build a real fleet. The mission to Helios Prime was the most ambitious operation humans had attempted since breaking free of the solar system. 5 ships, carrying elite teams from 6 different species, slipped past consortium defenses using improved phantom drives. Commander Eric Diaz led the assault. Using Aurore's predictions, they timed their attack perfectly during a shift change. Most of the consortium personnel surrendered quickly, surprised by attackers appearing literally out of thin air. For the first time, humanity and its allies captured advanced warships intact. Engineers from across the Liberty Network swarmed over the vessels, studying their technology. "This is it," Eric said as he walked through the massive shipyard with William Garcia, who had come to see their prize. "With these facilities, we can build ships to match anything the consortium has." William looked around at the enormous construction base. Ships in various stages of completion hung in zero-gravity docks. "Not just match," he said quietly. "Exceed." That night, as the Allied forces secured their new base, William stood alone by a viewport, looking out at the stars. 30 years had passed since the consortium had confined humanity to the solar system. Now humans led an alliance that threatened the consortium's control of the galaxy. The quantum communicator on his wrist beeped. It was a message from Admiral Powell on Earth. "The consortium is recalling ships from our sector," her message read. "Something has them scared. Whatever you're doing out there, it's working. Humanity is proud of you all." William smiled. The tide was turning, faster than anyone had dared to hope. 2 years after the capture of Helios Prime, the Shadow War had become a galaxy-wide conflict. The consortium no longer faced scattered rebellions, but a coordinated alliance of over 30 species. What had once been the Liberty Network was now officially called the Federation of Free Worlds. The Federation fleet, built in the shipyards of Helios Prime, grew stronger each month, based on consortium designs, but improved with human ingenuity and technologies from other allied species. These ships were faster and more powerful than anything the consortium had expected to face. At the consortium capital world of Zentrix, the ruling council faced a crisis unlike any in their history. High Chancellor Zorix, now old and frail, struggled to maintain control as reports of defeats poured in from across their territory. "Another system has fallen," reported a military commander. "The mining colony on Vega III has declared for the Federation." "This is impossible," Zorix hissed. "How can these primitives challenge us? We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Unknown to Zorix, cracks had begun to form within the consortium itself. The Araxians, the youngest member species who had joined only 3 centuries ago, had secretly reached out to human representatives. Ambassador Julia Foster met with Araxian diplomat Trelvac in a neutral system. Julia was in her 40s, with calm eyes that had seen much in her years of building alliances for humanity. "My government wishes to discuss terms," Trelvac said, his violet skin reflecting the light of the meeting room. "The consortium is weakening. Many of us no longer believe in its mission." "The Federation welcomes all who seek freedom," Julia replied. "But this would be unprecedented. A consortium species defecting." Trelvac leaned forward. "The consortium imprisoned your people without cause. They have exploited countless worlds. The Araxian people no longer wish to be part of this." The negotiations lasted weeks, but eventually succeeded. When the Araxian government publicly announced their withdrawal from the consortium and their alliance with the Federation, the shockwaves spread throughout the galaxy. Within months, 2 more consortium species followed the Araxian example. The balance of power shifted dramatically as the consortium lost ships, resources, and territory to their former members. On the Federation flagship, Reckoning, Admiral Diane Powell had finally left Earth to take command of the fleet she had helped create decades ago. At 82, her body was frail, but her mind remained sharp. She had lived to see humanity break free, and now commanded the largest fleet ever assembled in the galaxy. "The consortium leadership has called for a meeting," her communications officer reported. "They'd wish to discuss terms." Powell smiled slightly. "Not Zorix." "No, Admiral. There was a coup 3 days ago. Zorix has been removed from power." News of the coup spread rapidly through the Federation. The hardliners in the consortium had been overthrown by moderates who recognized the inevitability of defeat. 1 week later, in the neutral space of the Altair system, representatives from both sides met aboard a specially constructed space station. Julia Foster led the Federation diplomatic team, while the new consortium leadership was represented by Chancellor Mex Tull of the Brentary species. "We propose an immediate cessation of hostilities," Mex Tull began. "The consortium recognizes the Federation of Free Worlds as a legitimate galactic power." Julia studied the alien carefully. "And Earth?" "The quarantine." "Lifted, effective immediately," Mex Tull replied. "We acknowledge that the containment of humanity was an error in judgment." The negotiations continued for days, working out the details of borders, trade agreements, and reparations. When the final treaty was ready, Admiral Powell insisted on hosting the signing ceremony aboard her flagship. As the consortium representatives entered the Bridge of the Reckoning, Powell stood tall despite her age. "When you confined humanity to our solar system, you thought you were caging a dangerous animal," she said. "Instead, you challenged us to become something greater." Mex Tull bowed his head slightly. "A costly error we do not intend to repeat." The signing was broadcast throughout the galaxy. As the ceremony concluded, Powell turned to Julia. "Send word to Earth. Tell them it's finally time to come out of hiding. Humanity's exile is officially over." Across thousands of worlds, beings of all species watched as a new era in galactic history began. Humanity had not only broken free of their cage, they had reshaped the galaxy in the process. 20 years after Earth's exile, representatives from over 100 worlds gathered on New Haven to sign the Galactic Constitution. The great underground chamber had been transformed into a magnificent hall for the occasion, with the flags of all member species hanging from the ceiling. Kevin Reyes, the newly elected president of the Federation of Free Worlds, stood at the podium. At 55, he carried himself with quiet dignity. Before his political career, he had been one of the engineers who helped build New Haven's first power systems. "Today marks the beginning of a new era," Kevin said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "An era of cooperation, not domination. Of freedom, not control." Delegates from across the galaxy listened as he outlined the core principles of the Federation: mutual respect among all sentient species, the right of self-determination for all worlds, and a commitment to peaceful cooperation. Many of the original architects of humanity's escape from exile were present. William Garcia, now in his 70s, sat in the front row. Beside him were Kelly Johnson, Eric Diaz, and other pioneers who had risked everything to break free from the consortium's restrictions. As Kevin concluded his speech, the assembled delegates rose in applause. One by one, representatives approached the podium to sign the Galactic Constitution. First came the human delegation, led by the President of Earth. Then the Terraki, the Araxians, and dozens of other species who had joined the Federation. Even representatives from the reformed consortium, now much reduced in power and territory, signed as observers, acknowledging the new galactic order. After the ceremony, a special shuttle carried key Federation leaders to Earth. For the first time in 2 decades, the monitoring stations around the Sol system were being formally dismantled. Admiral Diane Powell, now retired but invited as a guest of honor, watched from the shuttle viewport as Earth grew larger. Tears formed in her eyes as she saw her homeworld without the shadow of alien confinement for the first time since the exile began. "I never thought I'd see this day," she said softly. Captain Samantha Riley, who had piloted the first ship to break through the blockade all those years ago, stood beside her. Now in her 50s, Sam commanded the Federation's Exploration Division. "Did you ever imagine this when you slipped past their sensors all those years ago?" Powell asked. Sam smiled, looking out at the blue-green planet below. "Not in detail. But I never doubted we'd find our place among the stars. It's who we are." The shuttle landed at the newly constructed Federation Embassy in New York. That evening, a celebration took place in the United Nations Grand Hall. the same room where humans had first learned of their exile from the galaxy. Kevin Reyes addressed the gathered dignitaries, both human and alien. The consortium feared our unpredictability, our drive, our refusal to accept limitations. They were right to fear these qualities, not because they make us dangerous, but because they make us unstoppable when we fight for what's right. He gestured to the diverse gathering before him. Today marks not the triumph of humanity alone, but of the universal desire for freedom that unites all thinking beings. Later, as the celebration continued, William Garcia found a quiet corner with Julia Foster and Peter Collins, the diplomats who had helped build the Federation through countless negotiations. "We did it," William said simply. "We not only escaped our cage, we changed the galaxy." "Humanity was never meant to be confined," Julia replied. "Neither was any other species. That was the consortium's fundamental mistake." Peter nodded. "They saw our differences as dangerous. We saw them as strengths to be combined." Outside the hall, the night sky above New York was clear. Stars shone brightly, no longer distant points of light beyond an impassable barrier, but destinations within reach. Among those stars were hundreds of worlds where humans now lived, worked, and built a future alongside other species. Earth itself had been transformed. Federation technology had helped clean the environment, end resource scarcity, and usher in a new golden age. What had begun as a desperate bid for freedom had become the foundation of the most powerful, just, and diverse civilization the galaxy had ever known. As dawn broke over New York, the first ships of the new Joint Federation exploration fleet prepared to depart from Earth's orbit. Their mission, to venture beyond known space, seeking new worlds and new civilizations in peace. Humanity's exile had ended. Their empire of freedom was just beginning.